Alright, so for this project, this is the Color Still Life one. So you did the spray paint cap. That was like last week. And then this week we're doing the Color Still Life. So for this one we use color pencil, or pencil, color pencil, and watercolor. So here's what I'm doing. So I found this gnarly lemon growing on my lemon tree. So it's all like alien. So I'm gonna paint this, or paint and draw this. So I already kind of sketched it out right here. So first thing I want to do, so you could sketch with just straight watercolor, but if you want to draw it first with pencil, you can do that. But the first thing I'm gonna do is use the Kneaded Eraser and kind of lift off a lot of the lines to kind of make it lighter, because like when you use watercolor, you know, once you kind of put a lot of it on, it's gonna be really hard to erase the pencil lines. Like the pencil lines will show through. So I want these lines to be really light. So first thing I'll do, I'll use a Kneaded Eraser to kind of lift it. If you could see, it's getting lighter. The image, it's like I could still see the outlines, but the lines are really light. So and I would use the Kneaded Eraser instead of the white eraser, because a white eraser kind of erases it a lot more cleanly. This one just kind of lightens it, especially if you just kind of press it and lift it off. So you can see it sort of getting light in there. All right, I think that's pretty good. And then the eraser, kind of flip it around, get a clean side, pull up more of it. Okay, so I'll put that over there. So when you're doing watercolor, you want to go light to dark. If you go too dark while it's wet, you can sort of lift off some of the color by just dampening your brush and then kind of lifting up some of the color. But it's going to be a lot easier if you just start really light and then work your way towards the dark. So so you guys have your watercolor set. This is mine. It's different. The colors are different, but it'll work the same. So let's get some water. Mix it with some of your color. And you could clean these real quick. Oh yeah, so you'll need container of water. So I would jar of water, paper towel. You know, in your watercolor kit, there should be a brush already. So you just use the one in there. The one in there is pretty good. So use that. And then, you know, watercolor cleans up with water. So I'm just going to clean off the palette from like an earlier painting. Paper towel. So when I mix my colors, they're going to be sort of clean. All right, so get my brush, grab some of the yellow, put it down here. And so this is white like the paper, so you can kind of see what the color is going to be. And so if you want it lighter, just add more water. And so from that first mixture, I'm just going to add some water to this. And it's probably helpful if you have like a test paper. So I'm just going to do it in the corner. So you can see it's pretty light. So, all right. So now first I'll kind of fill in the form. And so on this one, I'm going to take the water. And there's very little color in there, but I'm just going to take the water and sort of just fill in the area that I'm going to be painting in. So the whole area is wet that I'm working in. And the reason why I do this is like it keeps the paint kind of from drying and getting hard edges, but then also if it's going to bloom out, like if I'm going to do wet into wet and it's going to bleed out, like it'll stay in the area in the painting, so it won't go into the background. It'll just stay into the lemon. So That's pretty good. And for you guys, you're going to use your white paper in your kit, like the loose sheets. That's a mixed media paper. And that one's going to handle the paint a lot better than this paper I'm using. This is just my sketchbook paper. So, okay, so now I got it wet. So I can start to brush in some yellow. And first, what I'm going to do is, instead of just like fill in the whole thing, I'm going to kind of start with the shadows. So like the darker parts. Paint here. There we go. And so I could add more water. So this is called wet into wet because it's like the surface is wet and I'm putting wet paint into it. So, and this works really well because it tends to blend over really smoothly. Like you don't really get like hard edges to your paint strokes. All right, so right now I'm only using, the only color I'm using is the yellow. All right, and then you notice it down here it gets like more orange in the shadow. So I have orange. If you don't have orange in your kit, I think you might have it, but if you don't, you can mix it just with yellow and red. But over here, I'm not gonna use the orange straight. I'm gonna kind of mix some yellow into it. And if you look at the orange in here, it's not gonna be as bright as this one, right? Like this one is really saturated, meaning it's like really bright, like it's a strong orange. Like this is more muted, more subtle orange. And so to get your color to kind of look grayed out enough, like kind of realistic enough, you're gonna have to mix a complement. So the complement is whatever's opposite on the color wheel. So opposite from orange, what I would do is just Google image search a color wheel. But what's opposite of orange is gonna be blue. So I'm gonna add a tiny bit of blue. Does that show up on the video okay? Yeah, I think so. So I'll add it just down here. So see how like this one's a little bit muddier and then this one is more vibrant. So I want more of that muddier, kind of less saturated. See, because like that's closer to the shadow down here. So it's almost like more brown. So I could paint that in. I have that shadow. And the paper's still sort of damp. Like, it's okay. It's good to work on it when it's still kind of wet like that, rather than letting it dry, because then because then what happens, like these brush strokes kind of sort of blend in if you have the paper sort of wet. And so down here, this gets kind of dark. Can do some dots to kind of show the texture. And around this guy, so it's pretty dark. And so the reason why you want to go light to dark, because you can always go over it and make things darker. It's going to be a lot harder, or sometimes impossible, to make it light over dark. But dark over light, you could do all day. So okay, so for then the stem part, it's more like brown. So I'm gonna take my brown. Get some more water on that. All right, but you see it's like the brown isn't really like from this to here, it's not really dark enough, so I'm gonna have to darken it up. So I'm gonna use a blue. A little of that. And so brown and blue gives you kind of like a dark. So so the ratio is like more brown than blue, but it sort of made it darker and sort of graded out a little bit more to match what I see here. So I could just go in there and paint. And for details, kind of hold the brush more upright, so you use just the very tip of the brush. So it's almost like a pencil, almost like you're drawing it in. All right. So, and then this part kind of gets more yellow up there. So I'll leave that open. All right, so that's fine for the stem. But this color is also pretty good I could use for the shadow. So I could sketch it in. Right underneath here. And actually I'm gonna add more blue to the shadow so it gets darker. I think this is a blue also. Yeah, that's a good blue. So that with that brown gives me like a pretty good black. Even a little bit of the red maybe too. So there's black in your kit, but I would mix for the shadow. I wouldn't use the black for your kit because it's gonna be too dark. What I end up using that black for is like black and that yellow makes like a good army green. Black and the orange makes like a really good brown too. So, so for this one, like the reason why I mix my shadow, like the dark for my shadow, is because you look at it, it's like on a brown table, so it's not really. It might show up kind of black, or your mind might tell you it's black, but it's really like a dark brown. So, and then the reason why I mix it is like, then I'm able to get more variation in my shadow. Because if you just paint it black, like your shadow black, it's gonna look really flat. Because then it's like not gonna reflect any light or anything. It's just like there's no darks and lights. Think about those parts of the shadow, like from the first project, the sphere. How like when we did the shadow, we had like the core of the shadow. Like there's like cast shadow, there's reflected light, like all those parts. Like all those parts have to apply to your shadow. So I'll darken up the core. Adding maybe a little more blue to my mixture. And so remember, the core is going to be right next to the object. Like that's the darkest part. So I kind of block it in there. Yeah, it's a little better. And then it kind of goes, so this guy. So you see I put those outlines down, and I had to like put some paint right next to it really quickly so they don't, because if they dry then they show up. But, and then these, I gotta kind of soften this edge. That's good for the show. So now these other parts, like these parts are in the back. So I'll kind of paint those as like separate objects. So again, I'll do the same thing. Like I'll start this one back here that gets like a little bit of green in there. So I'll put some water down first in the area I'm gonna work in. And then I'll take my yellow. It's pretty similar. So I started just that area. So the water, I don't have to worry about the water moving around this one like tentacle thing that I painted. So I can put the water down, or the color, kind of start to fill it in. I'll do the whole thing, like kind of block it in. And it's a little bit darker down there, so I'll just put another layer of color. But it gets green right about here. So for that, I'll just get some green. And, you know, always like mix your color. Don't go straight from the palette. Or at least in this situation, I'm not going to go straight from the palette. You know, straight from the, mixing it from the palette and then straight into the painting. I'm going to mix it to get the right green I need. Because I need it kind of subtle. It's kind of a yellow green. I think that looks pretty good. And so this is still wet. And so what I could do is kind of put it in like at the end, because it gets kind of green at the end there. And then I'll clean out the brush, kind of try it on the paper towel. So now I kind of have like a damp brush. It's not really wet, but it's not dry either. It's a little damp. And now I could kind of move the green into those other areas. So I get it like to fade. Like I get that nice blend of like green to yellow. So, and then back here, these other like tentacles behind it, I'm gonna do more orangey. So they're kind of like, they're in a different space than these ones in front. So I'll go back to my orange, grab a little bit. Some yellow down. And then to kind of make it a little bit like a little grayer, like to kind of fall back a little bit so it's not really intense. I'll grab a little bit of my darker orange. I might have to add more blue to that. So a little more blue. That got too green, so let me put some more orange. That's better. And some more yellow. So that's kind of a more muted yellow orange. So I'll go ahead and paint these guys down. You could also add a little bit of brown to the mixture. And so you could think of it like the drawing too. You could kind of put in edges to your stuff, right? So you like kind of put in the edges with the line. And then before it dries, you know, use a damp brush and soften that. So I'm softening like the top of this line here, or like to the right and the top of this one. So I still have those edges, but then it just kind of blends out. So anywhere else, like I feel like it's kind of light still. I still need to get more yellow. So I could put. And so watercolor is transparent. So I could just brush in some yellow on top of all this, and like the shadows will still be there. Like you can still see all the shadows through it. So for this one, just to kind of darken up in a hurry, I'm putting a lot like yellow straight from the palette. Even though I said, like, you know, you always mix it. It's because I already have like those mixtures underneath, and it's just putting like a yellow wash over everything. And I can still see like the oranges, the browns, the greens, you know. So it's getting a little better. I still need to do like kind of a lot of shadows and things. So oh yeah, so this is dry. So I'll put a yellow over there. And some brown. So it's kind of, I don't know if that shows up on the video okay, but that's kind of some wet into wet. And just kind of let the two pigments, the brown and the yellow, kind of bleed together. So I saw this pattern here that's too light. Let's see, so add some more orange to this. So sometimes I'll let the marks kind of sit there, like I don't have the need to really like blend everything in. So. All right. And so to kind of make this fit in, just take my brown, and I'll paint the whole background this brown, but I can add some water to it. So it's not, so it's, you know, I'm letting some of the white of the paper show through, so kind of taking it down a little bit. So. And so this gets hard, like when you fill a space like this, you kind of have to work fast, and you always just have to work on the edges. So I'm applying more paint to like this, this shape of a background, right? So when I put more, I'm putting it on the edges. I'm not letting any of the edges dry. So I'm kind of, so the shape's getting a little bit bigger and bigger each time I'm adding more paint. And then this way, if you work like this, you'll have an even kind of blend. Once in watercolor, once you let the shape dry, then it's gonna it's gonna flatten out. Like it won't feel like space anymore. Like you'll see like the edge of your stroke. So all right, so this is the first step of the drawing. So on your guys' paper, so this is pretty small. This is my sketchbook. And you don't have to work really huge on this. If you want to go big, you have that paper's 18 by 24 inches. You could go that whole size. But if you'd rather work small, that's fine too. Just kind of cut that paper down. That's probably, for what we have, like the size of our brushes, and we use colored pencils, it's probably going to be easier for you guys to work smaller than it is going bigger. So this is like what, smaller than my hand. It's like you know, maybe like a few inches by like 2 by 3 inches right now. But you know, I would say anywhere like 9 by 12, 8 by 10, like that. Those would be good sizes to do, where you could do enough detail. All right, so I kind of have my space marked in. So this is the first part, like I said. The second part is you're gonna use color pencils. So gotta let this dry for a little bit, but these are the colors I'm gonna be using. So I kind of have a white, a yellow, orange, a green, and a brown. So I'll use these to kind of do more of the details and kind of punch up some of the shadows. So I'll let this dry, and then I'll start another video for that.